Hey, this is Brandon McManus, Denver Broncos Super Bowl champion, and you listen to The Scoop on alscoop.com.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The Scoop. This is Season 5, Episode 47 of alscoop.com's podcast. I'm John DeCarlo, joined by Sam Cohen again. We've got a lot of stuff to cover this week, some basketball recruiting news, some football recruiting news, plenty of mailbag questions. The basketball recruiting news we're getting to, this is a big one for Temple. The Owls have received their first verbal commitment from the 2021 class in Neumann Goretti point guard Hysier Miller. He averaged 14 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3.5 steals a game this past season for a Saints team that won the Philadelphia Catholic League championship, beat a very good Roman Catholic team. This is the first time Temple has gotten a player from Neumann Goretti since, I don't know, maybe ever. The person who can help talk about that and a lot more that's joining us this week is Neumann Goretti assistant coach John Brennan. John is kind enough to make time for us this week. He told us before we started recording that he's on a vacation with some friends, just showed us his view. Is that Lake Erie, John?
It is. It's Lake Erie, directly between Ohio, like northeastern Ohio, Michigan, and Canada, actually. So I'm looking out at the water now, and they say just on the cusp of the horizon is about 40 miles, and that's actually where Canada starts. So if we go fishing, we have to bring our passports.
There you go. Nice. Well, John, thanks so much for joining us this week. Really appreciate it. So again, we're recording this now and talking to Temple fans who are listening to the podcast here about this big verbal commitment for Temple. You know Hysier really, really well on the court, off the court. If you could just tell us just what kind of a player Temple's getting with him. I mean, this is a big thing for them. He's a point guard. He can really defend. His offensive game really seems to be coming along. A big deal for Temple to get a local guy to stay home. What kind of player in person are they getting?
Sure, and thank you guys for having me. In terms of a player, Hysier is the consummate floor general. He's the leader of our team. He came to us last year via transfer, Martin Luther King. So the beginning stages, while he was with us the first few weeks, he kind of took a step back. Obviously, we had some very talented seniors as well, but in an organic way, he was able to insert himself as a leader as the season progressed. And that was just based on the type of person he is. He's a type A personality. He doesn't lead necessarily by yelling at people. It's more so by his actions that he's able to hold, his teammates accountable. He's always doing the right thing. He's always giving 100% effort in practice, even on down days. So that's the type of person and player he is. I'm not sure if you want me to go into more player traits right now, or if I should hold off and.
Yeah, I mean, if you want, yeah, I mean, we got a lot to ask you about, but yeah, I mean, obviously he played well in some really big games for you, but we hear a lot about the defender he is, but it seems like his offensive game has really come around this summer too.
Yeah, definitely. He was the backbone of our defense last year in terms of really being able to pressure the ball and kind of heat up some of the better lead guards in the region that he faced last year. Obviously, everyone knows how many talented guards there are in the Catholic League, but he was also able to showcase his defensive ability when we were out at the Tarkanian Classic in Las Vegas and just some other games like down in Maryland at the Governor's Challenge. So defensively, he's always putting his hard hat on every single possession. Offensively, it's funny because, his defense always gets highlighted, but he was actually our leading scorer last year as well on the season. I can't quote a direct number now, but I know that he had over 400 points last year for us on a very, very balanced squad. He shot the three-point ball really well. He was, I believe, 41% from three last year. So he shoots a really clean ball. He really knows how to get downhill. And one of his better attributes is that when he's driving the ball offensively, if he's not getting a layup or getting fouled himself, he does a great job of spraying the ball. which is just a term that we use when you get into the paint with 2 feet and you find the 3-point shooters on the outside. So he uses his physical nature to kind of get to his spots on the floor. And he's really become this offseason a great finisher around the basket as well.
John, we've talked a little bit about this previously, but for our listeners, can you tell them what you think ultimately sold Hysier on staying home and committing to Temple?
Sure. I think it was a lot of things. Obviously, staying home is appealing. It's special, right, to get an offer from Temple University if you're a Philly kid. It's special to be able to play in the Big Five in front of all your friends and family. I think when you couple that with his relatability to the coaching staff, and what I mean by that is obviously Coach McKee has a similar story, being raised in the city as well. And then Chris Clark was a former Philadelphia Catholic League point guard. So he had a lot of commonalities with those guys. And I think as his recruitment progressed, he just had a strong attraction to them as people. And then when you merge that with the program, the academic offerings, what he wants to get into professionally after basketball, I think it was just a great marriage all the way around.
John, I look at him and I wonder if we're looking at and again, you'd be able to answer this better than I could, if we're looking at a guy that was really kind of, in terms of his recruiting profile, kind of under-recruited. And I'm wondering if Temple got a steal here, because there were so many times when you guys played against some of the top players in the area who are also some of the top players in the country. He defended Jalen Worley really well back in December, stole the ball from him a few times down the stretch when you guys beat Westtown. Then he had 24 against Archbishop Wood and an 11-point win that you guys have over them in January. He had 24 in that game. Rasul Diggins, who's gets a lot more visibility recruiting-wise, had 14 in that game. And then obviously you have the performance that he gave you guys in the PCL championship game. You guys beat, again, a good Roman team that had Lynn Greer, Jalen Duran, Justice Williams. And then his recruitment kind of like stayed in kind of that mid-major range. And then it seemed like this summer, again, even though there's no AAU ball, he's been playing in some of these other runs. And then some high major offers came along, or high major interest came along. Well, it seemed like on a recruitment level, he was kind of underappreciated or kind of under-recruited. Why do you think that is? Because it seemed like in the biggest stages, he really stepped up on both ends of the floor.
I agree. And I mean, our staff at Neumann Goretti said that, and we witnessed it firsthand every single day in practice. And, part of it can be attributed to obviously playing with other seniors. Like, we really did a good job of sharing the ball this year. So we got contributions from a different person each game. And I think that was reflected in the all Catholic teams, the all tournament teams when we played in different events, and then the all state teams. All of our guys got a lot of love. And that's kind of, how we operate our program, how Coach Arragale likes to operate. He doesn't ever want it to be about just one guy. Mm-hmm. And he preaches that. And that's something that Hysier bought into immediately when he came to the team. He actually came off of the bench, and he was willing to do that his first few games of his junior year, because Coach Arragale, obviously, he predicates his system upon loyalty as well. So guys that were in the system, he gives them a chance. And once we were able to tinker with lineups, his play kind of did the speaking for him. And it got to a point where we couldn't keep him out of the starting lineup, where we had to have him matched up against the Jalen Worleys, the Rasul Diggins, and the other players of that caliber. In terms of his recruitment, obviously no AAU season really hurt him, as it did a ton of other 2021 kids. Other high major programs were canvassing, were calling around and, doing their diligence to see if he would, be a prospect that can play at that level. And I think he was kind of on the cusp of receiving a lot of high major offers. But it's never about, like, for us, what we tell the guys, it's never about level. It's never about conference. It's about individual fit for you as a player and where you're going to be able to get on the court early and really create a resume for yourself if basketball is the end goal and playing professional is the end goal. So I do think that he might have been a bit under-recruited, but that's not to say that he didn't find an outstanding match in Temple, because I think he did.
Yeah, and how big of a deal is this for Temple, John? You're a Temple guy, and you know how even sometimes for Villanova, it's been hard for the local programs. Obviously, Nova's won 2 national titles in 5 years, but Temple has gone after a lot of local guys and tried to keep them home, whether it's been
Sure.
a guy like Brad Wanamaker, all sorts of different guys. And it's hard. It's been hard to get guys out of Neumann Goretti. That's been Jim Boeheim country. And it seems like Temple is getting a verbal commitment from him at just the right time. And he could be that local story, a guy that takes, you look at Temple, it's, they play in the American, but they have high major resources. And Aaron wants to get them into that stratosphere with Villanova, and they want to be one of the top programs in the country. Is he that guy that can kind of help them move the needle, and people look back and say, yeah, Temple was able to get one of the best local guys to stay home?
I certainly think so. I think that Fabe is what we call Hysier. I think he's a culture changer. You're never going to have a bad day of practice when that guy's in the gym. He really brings up the competitive nature of the team. And when speaking about like city schools, the City Six, obviously, and recruits, it's also difficult. Like, I think the city schools catch a lot of flack at times for not recruiting local guys, but it's also about fit. Like, you have to find the right kids that want to stay home and want to play for Temple and play for the other, City Six schools as well. And you can't really, you have to proceed with caution when recruiting city kids as well, because you don't want to recruit not necessarily the wrong type of kids, but if those kids don't fit your culture as a team and as a program, and, they transfer out after a year or two, then sometimes that cuts off your resources and cuts off your relationships in terms of pursuing additional recruits in years moving forward. So I do think that you do have to proceed with caution when recruiting city kids, but I think that he's the perfect type of kid for Temple. I think, he's going to bring toughness to Broad Street, and I just think he embodies a lot of the characteristics that Temple has and that they want to move forward with in terms of their program on and off the court.
There was that, obviously with the pandemic, like we said, there's been no AAU ball, but he had that performance in that Difference Makers run that was organized by Julian Dunkley, another former Temple guy, where he had something like 50 of his team's 80 points, and he did it once again against some really good players. It seemed from the outside looking in that kind of elevated things for him. Again, he's a good player, but I just started hearing a lot of buzz after that game where, like, some people I talked to had said, I knew he was good. Now he's got a chance. He's got a chance. He looked really, really good in that game. Was that kind of, again, I'm assuming you were there from looking at your Twitter. Was that kind of like did you start hearing more from other coaches and other programs after that game?
I think it kind of helped put him over the top. And what I mean by that is, obviously he had his reputation that backed him up. Obviously he had his great performances and was our leading scorer throughout the year, but it kind of quantified what was already qualified. So it gave numbers and credence to the players that he was playing against in that game, and then being kind of like that alpha in the game, going up against those other guys that already hold those high major offers and already have big names for themselves, and rightfully so. So I do think that him playing in that game really helped, showcase what he could do against other high major talent as the guy with the ball in his hands.
John, you and Hysier met about 2 years ago, and you mentioned to me that him and one of the other former players were even at your wedding recently. You guys hang out of basketball sometimes. Can you talk about the relationship you have with him and what's helped you two connect so well over the past 2 years?
Yeah, I think so. It's your friend Jordan Hall is the other guy, and he's another one. He's staying home, going to St. Joe's University, and we were actually all together this morning. And I think the element that drives our relationships is that we don't always have to talk about basketball. I think people are kids, I should say, are overwhelmed a lot of times with just basketball. Like, what offers are you considering? How are you working on your game? Are you getting stronger? And for me, it's just like, how can I be an outlet for those guys, Hysier specifically in this instance? How can I take something off of your shoulders? Like, let's not even talk about basketball right now. Let's talk about your life. Let's talk about what you want to do outside of basketball. Let's just go get a bite to eat. Let's not talk about anything. So there doesn't always have to be an agenda. And I think that's what like helps our relationship, and us both being South Philly guys, obviously that helps as well. We have some commonalities in that regard. So I just think it's like that personal side of things that helps us connect so well.
As you guys were just talking about, you've been around him for most of the summer, seeing him play in these really competitive runs, working out with him, just about every weekday morning, seeing his progression from where he was at the end of the season to where he is now without having AAU ball. What parts of his game have you think improved the most?
Well, if you let Fabe tell it, he's always had it. So that's the funny part. Like, he's a super confident kid, and he's always like looking for that approval from me. He's like, I'm telling you, you just don't know yet. You just don't know how good I am yet. And I'm like, no, I get it. I really know. Like, I'm not a guy that throws out approval all the time. But in terms of his overall game, his shot has really improved. His release point is higher. He's just shooting it at a much more consistent rate. And for a kid that shot between 40 and 42% last year, obviously that might come off as, seeming odd to people. But I think he shot at such a high percentage, and all of our guys did last year. We made 300 three-pointers as a team over 28 games last year, which is ridiculous. So in terms of volume, he'll shoot more shots this year. So I hope that he's able to maintain that 40 to 42% over a larger amount of shots, over a larger sample size. So I think that he shoots a cleaner ball. I think that his handle is vastly improved. That's one area that he's really put an emphasis on in this offseason, is improving his handle. Not that he didn't already possess a good handle, but just tightening things up, learning how to get to his spots in a smaller amount of dribbles.
And one thing that stood out to me in talking with him, and I can only imagine you've really seen this firsthand, is his unrelenting love for the game and how invested he is in learning as much as he can about the game of basketball. He's talked about watching a lot of film of not only himself, but of guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Damian Lillard, Cassius Winston. Do you have a sense of what he's looking for when he's watching film, and how much he's going to try to model his game after those guys versus trying to build his own game?
So I think that for him specifically, I think he's just a fan of the game. And I think a lot of kids these days, and I might be generalizing a ton, I don't think that they watch the game enough. So we always talk to Fabe about, when you're on the court, look at the point guard. Look at everything but the ball, though. Like, don't necessarily follow the ball. Follow the game that's going on, and on the weak side, because that's how you're going to learn what reads to make. That's how you're going to learn. You might not make the assist, but we call it like the one more, the hockey assist. You might have to be willing to make that pass to the person that's going to get the assist. So when he looks, I just tell him to look at how the point guards move, look at how they're pressuring the ball, and look at how they're kind of facilitating for others. So those are the main areas of emphasis that, personally I speak to him about. But I know for him, he's such a student of the game that he's taking it all in, and then he's looking at all 5 spots on the floor.
John, can you talk to us about how he, you talked a little bit about this already when he came to you guys, to Neumann Goretti from MLK. Like, Carl's obviously had a super long history of success there. He's been one of the top high school coaches not just in Philly, but in the country. And you said he came into a program that already had some established players, and you talked about how he blended in and kind of found his stride. Did he handle the transition pretty well? Because, like, guys transfer in and out of schools in Philly all the time, and sometimes it's a good fit. Sometimes they transfer into the Catholic League and it works, and sometimes it doesn't. You touched on this a little bit already, but what was it like when he first came in, and what stuck out to you guys about him where you were like, okay, he is the real deal. He's as good as we thought he was going to be?
So a couple things that you touched on there. For Coach Carl, it's obviously, if he was going to bring a guy in, it's expectation setting. So Fabe had to know what was expected of him, that nothing was going to be promised, and that he was going to have to work for everything. And for him, that's all he needs, is an opportunity or a chance. Like, you don't have to promise that kid anything. He's going to come in and he's going to show you, just because he has that chip on his shoulder. So initially, like, it wasn't difficult at all. So I had him and our Neumann guys on our Chosen League team, the Nike Chosen League that Raheem Thompson runs. So that was kind of our first look at everyone together. And, immediately I knew it was going to be a great fit because he wasn't looking to be ball dominant. He wasn't necessarily hesitating or doing anything in that regard. He was just coming in with the mindset of how can I, positively impact this team. We had a lot coming back and we were going to be successful regardless, but how can I put these guys over the top and how can I help win a Catholic League championship?
John, one thing a lot of our listeners and a lot of people on social media may know you for is constantly posting workouts and videos, working to connect your guys with college coaches. How have you been able to get some of your guys exposure, especially going through a pandemic, and how important do you think social media is for getting these kids recruited in today's day and age?
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, especially during these times. It's all about exposure. So for me, I have some relationships with college coaches, but I know how far a retweet goes. If there's one person that retweets a video, it might create an opportunity, 6 degrees of separation down the line for them somehow. So I just try to, throw little tidbits out of videos, and then underneath of it, I'll thread it with, their game film, just to try to intrigue coaches to, hey, one more click away is this kid's entire game film for his entire junior season. Here's a little highlight and a little blurb about what kind of kid he is, what kind of student he is. And this is why you should, potentially click on that huddle link to see more game film over the course of a longer sample of an entire season. So I think it's really important as coaches. It's not just a during the season job, especially during this day and age. If you're not helping to expose your kids to colleges at every single level and different camps and different runs, like the Difference Makers runs and Jado Films runs and things of that nature, then I don't really feel like I'm doing my job personally. And especially during the times of the pandemic, you have to go above and beyond, and you have to find ways to be creative in order to get your guys a spotlight or a piece of it.
John, is there probably there are a bunch of moments you could point to, but again, he's played really well against some of the best guards in Philly, who again, consequently, are some of the best guards in the country. Is there a game from this season, or maybe even a moment in practice that stands out to you that kind of epitomizes the type of player he is?
I think there was a few games. I can highlight the Archbishop Wood game. I can highlight the Putnam City West game in Las Vegas in the Tarkanian Classic. For me, it was probably the Malvern Prep game. I believe it was our third game of the season. The first 2 games he played well. Obviously, you highlighted his game against Westtown and Jalen Worley, a super worthy opponent. But that Malvern game, it was the following weekend. It was at the Diane Moscow Classic. And we started off fast. I thought we were going to lose our energy at one point in the middle of the first quarter. He was substituted into the game, and he just kind of put on a show in that first half. And that kind of opened my eyes to say, hey, this kid is ready right now, and he's the real deal. He was obviously going against 2 Division I guards in Radir Hicks and Deuce Turner, and he more than held his own, in my opinion, against 2 more worthy opponents, and really just gave us that offensive infusion that we needed in the middle of that game to put us over the top to eventually get the win.
John, I wanted to ask you just about you and your career too, because you have an impressive resume too. You're a 2007 Temple grad, an STHM grad. You have a master's from LaSalle in secondary education, a doctorate from Widener in higher education leadership. You're the senior business partnership specialist with the Philadelphia Youth Network. You've been an assistant at O'Hara, your alma mater. So you've got an impressive resume, both in and out of basketball. Can you kind of just tell us about how you got involved with the game, when you started playing, and just your own career path? Because
Sure.
you've got a lot of cool things going on.
Thank you. I'll glaze over it. I don't like to give myself a lot of attention, but growing up, I grew up in Chester, PA, obviously a huge basketball city. And I played Chester Biddy ball. I played for St. Catherine Drexel at the time. It was Blessed Catherine Drexel. So I was a part of very successful programs growing up. And my brother, he had the opportunity to play for Jameer Nelson Youth Interlock AAU program and Chester Biddy All-Stars growing up. So I was always around the game, and the first person that I kind of trained was my youngest brother. So that's when I really developed a love for just the player development piece. And, you know, I loved being around the game. I remember us waking up early when the new N1 mixtapes would come out, and we would rush to Foot Action. We'd put our money together to buy like a headband just to be able to get the N1 mixtape. So that was like my initial love for the game. And from there, I knew I went to Temple. Coach Chaney didn't need me to play. I asked him, but he didn't need me to be a player. But I always stayed close to the game. In my freshman year of college, I actually coached under Bill Ludlow at West Catholic. And since then, I've always been in and around the game and just love helping kids and kind of paying it forward.
And we talked about this before we started recording and figured out how much you and I have in common. I was born at Crozier Hospital, never lived in Chester, but from Delaware County. And you live in South Philly now. My wife and I were down there. I don't miss the parking, but I miss the proximity to East Passyunk Avenue and lived here from Wolf. Tell us about some of your favorite things about living down there. Like where do you go for takeout during the pandemic, and where are you going to go eat once it's safe to eat in a restaurant again?
So I'll give you three. We'll start basic. So Mifflin Tavern is first. Mifflin Tavern is on 2nd and Mifflin in South Philly. If you're going there, you got to get the chicken parm egg rolls. And they, if you're over the age of 21, they do a nice mule as well. They do a nice Moscow mule. Yeah. If I'm getting a cheesesteak in the neighborhood, I'm going to John's Roast Pork. Yep. Got to get the seeded sarcone roll. Mm-hmm. And then I'm a little bit untraditional. I mix whiz and Provi, and then I go fried onions, ketchup, pickles. Wow. And then we'll give you a dessert as well. We'll go cannolis from Isgro's. Oh, yeah. Cannolis from Isgro's in the neighborhood. So other than that, I would say the one other place is Moonshine. So Moonshine is on Moya Mensing and Moore. So they do a really good job with just like your local fare and bar food and craft beers and things like that.
See, Sam's from Boston, so they've got good Italian food in the North End. But I would I've been up there, but I would put Isgro's stuff up against anywhere. I miss it. I make it sound like it's far away. I can drive back into the city and see it, but I used to be able to walk to that stuff. But John, this was so much fun, man. I appreciate it. Really appreciate you spending some time with us and giving us some insight into Hysier's game. And best of luck to you, and we'll stay in touch. And thanks so much for doing this. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Happy to have participated. Thanks, guys.
All right. So once again, a big thank you to John Brennan from the Neumann Goretti staff. A lot of good insight into Hysier Miller's career, his game, what he could bring to Temple. Sam, what are some of your takeaways from the conversation?
One thing I really like about John Brennan as a coach, and this is something we talked about briefly, but you don't see a lot of coaches do what he does in terms of getting his players in contact with college coaches and getting them the exposure. He was talking about kind of just posting clips of his guys often on Twitter, kind of gaining a following and gaining traction for some of his guys. I think that's really interesting. And him and Hysier have a really close relationship. They've become really close over the last 2 years. So he's definitely a good voice to hear from about what Temple's getting in their newest point guard.
So obviously this commitment, I mean, Temple needed this. They were getting to an interesting point where they had offered, obviously, and we'll talk about Stevie Mitchell committing to Marquette. And this comes it's been an interesting couple of weeks since we last recorded the scoop. So Temple's been recruiting Stevie Mitchell from West Lawn High School in Reading. Obviously was a huge recruiting target for them. And then they offered Hysier Miller right after that difference makers game that Julian Dunkley had organized. Again, for those of you who might be closer to my age, remember Julian Dunkley from Trey Hill West High School, played at Temple for a couple of years, transferred to Maine, and he works out a lot of the top guys in the area. And Temple had been recruiting Fabe, as John said, is his nickname. You'll hear that a lot. They've been recruiting him for a while, hadn't pulled the trigger on an offer, and then they offered. And you talk to various people around the area, and maybe about a month and a half ago, wherever it looked like things were going to get really tough for Temple in terms of trying to get Stevie Mitchell because he had the Villanova offer. And then things started to break in Temple's favor if you were kind of forecasting this out. Angelo Brizzi commits, Rasul Diggins is going to UConn. And there are no visits, but ultimately Stevie Mitchell looks like decided to commit to a school he's never seen in person before, Marquette. And it's, on one hand, I get the fan disappointment. It is a bit of a kick in the pants. You lose Stevie Mitchell to Marquette, and his lead recruiter was none other than Dwayne Killings, who did a really good job when he was on Fran Dunphy's staff. Eventually left to go to UConn. Now he's at Marquette working for Steve Wojciechowski. And it did look like things were going to break Temple's way at some point. And then we had some readers saying, well, what would happen if both guys want to commit? Would they take both players? Because both guys are kind of ball dominant guards. But Stevie Mitchell, within the past week, you have Stevie Mitchell committing to Marquette, but Temple also getting Hysier Miller. Wanted to bounce this around a little bit with you. Obviously, you have two very good players. Hysier's not in the Rivals 150. He's not a highly ranked guy. Stevie Mitchell, I get it, would have created some rankings buzz for you because he's a top 100 player. Can't remember the last top 100 guy Temple's gotten if you're into rankings. But what do you make of this? Did Temple really get their guy here? I wonder if we're going to look back. And again, if Hysier Miller turns out to be as good as people think that he can be, he could, like as John said, he's a culture changer. And if Temple can look back and say, yeah, it would have been great to get Stevie Mitchell. His mom played at Temple, played women's basketball at Temple, but they got a guy to stay home, a Philadelphia Catholic League player. Again, the last guy, the cool story, the cool cycle of things is Chris Clark was the last PCL guy they got out of St. Joe's Prep. And it could be a great story. I don't think he's just a consolation prize. I think you're looking at two really good ball players here. Wanted to get your thoughts on that whole thing because, again, a lot's happened since the last time we reported.
I think the initial fan reaction, and to an extent it was a fair one, was to say they missed out on Stevie, they got Hysier. It feels like a loss. But I think that's also seeing Hysier where Hysier's come over the last 5-6 months. I think now that's kind of an unfair testament. Mm-hmm. I think that they really got, as you mentioned, a guy that's going to stay home in Philly. He's a culture changer. He's a guy that really wants to work hard. And I think he's a very different player than Stevie. Yeah. Stevie's ranked top 100 because he's really flashy offensively. He can do a lot with the ball. He's a really smart kid. He's like, that's kind of what you want in your point guard. You want a kid who can make plays off the dribble, who's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. And he's a really dominant, pure scorer. Hysier, that's not what you're getting. I think you're getting a guy who has worked on his offensive game a lot more as of the last 4 or 5 months. But he's known for his defensive prowess. He's known for his toughness and his work ethic. He's known for being able to be a floor general, be a facilitator. You just heard John Brennan call him the consummate floor general. That's the kind of guy you're getting in someone like Hysier Miller. I think that he talked about his offensive game has really grown. The thing that he told me that is going to help him at the college levels, the fact that he can score at all 3 levels. So the fact that he brings that fire and that energy and that ability to be a culture changer, along with that talent, kind of meeting that right at the right time, I don't think Hysier is a bad get. I think he's a really, really high upside to what he can bring to Temple. Yes, he's probably an inch or two smaller than Stevie, and he's probably not as good of a pure scorer as Stevie, but I really think he could be a great get for Temple.
Yeah, and again, like we were talking about with John, I look at the games he had this year. I mean, he made, I wasn't at this game, but I remember talking to some people and saying he made life difficult for Jalen Worley, especially down the stretch. Played really well against Rasul Diggins, played well against Lynn Greer. He got a lot of his points in that PCL championship game at the free throw line, but they count and they matter, and he helped ice the game. And I kind of wondered why his recruitment was kind of in this mid-major level. And again, like Temple's, we've talked about this so many times, Temple's they play in the American, which is just outside, that top tier of conferences, but you've still got great basketball. You've got Memphis, you've got SMU, you have Cincinnati, and they have high major resources. And I just wonder if we're going to look back at this and say this was one of the tipping points for Aaron. Like he got a kid to stay home because it is hard. And as John said, you have to find the right fit. You have to find somebody who's wired to want to stay home. And again, Temple has never gotten a kid out of Neumann Goretti. Scoop Jardine, Rick Jackson, they were off to Syracuse. It's been hard to keep guys home from Roman Catholic. And so I think this is a really interesting development, a really good development for Temple. So they've got one guy out of the way now on verbal commitment in Hysier Miller. Again, I would imagine he'll sign his national letter of intent in the early period in November. And it'll be interesting to see what his senior season's like. Hopefully there will be high school basketball this year. Hopefully things will get better with the pandemic. Hopefully we'll have a vaccine. We'll have some better leadership.
Fingers crossed we have a season.
What's that?
I say fingers crossed we have a season.
Yes. But and it'll be interesting to see how he develops in his second year in the program. Because again, Carl Argyle is one of the better high school coaches, not just in Philly, but in the entire country. So again, big thank you to John.
One more thing I want to say about Hysier and what I think he can. I guess the best way to put it is kind of what he can bring is like he's coming in at a really interesting time and a really interesting position with Temple, because when he gets to campus in 2021, Ty Strickland's going to be a junior. Jeremiah Williams is going to have a year under his belt. So I think he's coming in with 2 point guards in front of him and the potential to really be fighting for anything. He's going to have to fight for every bit of court time. And when I asked John Brennan about that, he said that's all he needs. That's all he wants. That's all Fabe needs. It's just an opportunity. And I think the way John Brennan put it when I was talking to him the other day was that what Temple wants and what Aaron McKee wants is to just build a competitive gym and grow a competitive gym. And that's what Hysier Miller is going to bring. He's going to earn everything. He's going to fight for everything. He doesn't want to be promised a chance to play because he's going to be behind those two guys who could potentially do great things for the program. So to have him really fight for that, it could change the balance of power in that backcourt.
Yeah, and just a reminder, as you're listening to the podcast now, Sam's story on Hysier's verbal commitment is up on the site right now. So if you're an owlscoop.com subscriber, you can check out that story. We'll talk a little bit more about basketball recruiting a little bit later in the podcast. We have a very bountiful mailbag this week, probably 17, 18 questions or so. So we've got a lot to get to there
this week.
Obviously, yeah, I had some football stuff to get to too. Every day brings something new. Is there going to be a season? Is there not going to be a season? We are recording this a little bit ahead of time. If you're listening to this now and it's Friday, August 7th, Temple started preseason camp this week. Again, we'll have to see if there is a tipping point, if one of the Power 5 conferences, whether it's the Big Ten or the Pac-12, if one of them pulls the plug and says, we're not playing this season, and that starts a chain reaction where they punt to playing in the spring. We'll see. But as of now, Temple's moving forward. They've been doing some of the mandatory workouts, ramping things up. I've been told that Rod Carey's approach has been kind of like a cautious approach, ramping things up a little bit at a time. But preseason camp started in earnest this Friday. So there's a lot to get to. There's the schedule. The Miami game is officially off the schedule. Again, if you've been reading some of our coverage and again, just following along, it's just been a crazy thing to keep track of. Temple was originally set to open its season on September 5th at Miami. That's going to have to, if it is rescheduled to another season, it won't happen this season because the ACC's board of directors announced last week that the fall sports schedule was going to be pushed back and not start until September 7th. So the Miami game is off the schedule. You know that the Rutgers game is off the schedule because the Big Ten decided it was going to go with conference-only games this season. Then if you've been following along in the media, I believe it was Brett McMurphy was the first to report the story that the majority of Idaho's football team has said that they don't want to play this season due to concerns about the long-term impact of COVID-19. So we'll see what happens there. Then Fran Dunphy came out with a statement today. Again, Fran Dunphy is now Temple's acting interim athletic director, had said that they are going to try to pursue some options, try to reschedule some games. All of that's up in the air at this point, but a lot going on with football. Again, that statement from Fran Dunphy, he had said we had reached an agreement to reschedule our football game at Miami and are working currently to find the right date that fits both programs. We're also actively looking to schedule non-conference opponents for our 2020 schedule. So I'm sure fans are going to be scouring the internet, trying to piece things together, taking a guess at, what other teams could be possibilities for Temple if there is a season. So could be possible that they're not playing their first game maybe until later in September at Navy. We'll have to see. Again, this is the very definition of things being fluid. And then the other thing that you're seeing too now is another point of interest is you're seeing some of the better players in college football starting to opt out. Micah Parsons, the linebacker from Penn State, has decided to opt out. He was projected to be a first-round pick. And now Greg Rousseau, the defensive end from Miami, who's very good, also projected as a first-round pick, is also opting out per his coach, Manny Diaz, who spent a hot minute at Temple. You guys all know about that. He was in Philly for all of a few weeks before taking the Miami job. And I just wonder what's going through Quincy Roche's head right now. Obviously, no one could have predicted any of this when he decided to grad transfer to Miami. But what are you thinking if you're him now? Because they were going to be one of the most formidable defensive end combinations in America. I wonder what's going through Q's head right now because he transferred to Miami to get a little bit more exposure. Again, all of this could be a moot point if there is no season, but there's just a ton going on with college football right now. And we'll keep you updated and see if there's going to be a season. I think on paper, if Temple does get to play the season, they've got some good pieces and parts coming back on both sides of the ball. In terms of football recruiting, Temple's up to 15 verbal commitments now with the addition of Coleman Jeffcoat from Charlotte's Mallard Creek High School. Sam Neumann talked to Jeffcoat for a story you can read on our site right now if you're a subscriber. It's obviously still early in the process, but Temple has the 52nd ranked recruiting class in the nation and the third best in the American, behind Memphis and Cincinnati. So again, you can check out Sam's story. Sam said he's tutoring students for the SATs, right? That's what he's doing? He's not
must be a smart kid. I don't know if I can tutor students for the SATs, but yeah, that's what he's doing.
Yes. So Sam, just doing good things, just doing more worthy stuff than what we're doing.
A man of the people, a man of his community.
Yeah.
About the youth.
Yes. And we're just here talking about a college football season that may not happen. So what are we giving back? I ask myself. I don't know, but it's great to spend time with you nonetheless, Sam. So we'll go to the mailbag. We have a ton of questions. Maybe the hiatus had people yearning for information here, Sam. I don't know.
Do we have a scoop record of what's the most mailbag questions you've gotten?
I would have to go back. Kyle probably has that on a spreadsheet somewhere. So
Kyle probably knows off the top of his head.
Yeah, he probably does know off the top of his head. So got a ton of mailbag questions to get to. And again, through these mailbag questions, we'll flesh out a lot more of what you guys want to hear about. So the first question, again, most of these are from our message board. Some are from Twitter. The first one comes from the screen name DThomas96. Any info on the Sanders commitment? Is his scholarship set in stone, or can we assume that we still have 2 more scholarships with the favoring of a Miller commitment? So he's talking about Brandon Sanders. He is the big man down in Miami who announced his verbal commitment to Temple. He's set to prep next season. I do get the impression, Sam, we're on the same page with this, that, as of now, he's not arriving at Temple as part of the 2020 class, as part of the 2021 class, but it's a verbal commitment. And I get the sense that things are kind of still up in the air there. And if he goes to prep, if he gets everything in order and plays well, I'm sure Temple might say, all right, yeah, we're still taking him. Again, the coaches can't comment on the record about a player who's not signed a national letter of intent yet, which Sanders has not. So to say his scholarship is set in stone, I don't get that impression just yet. I think this is, again, a kind of a fluid situation. I think that there is a possibility that the staff is probably looking at the 2021 class and saying that they have 2 more scholarships available. So it'll be interesting to follow. He's again, we haven't seen him play live. He's tall. He's supposed to be a very active shot blocker. Sam, you talked to his high school coach a little bit. You can kind of shed some more light on this, but I do think things with him are still kind of up in the air. Yeah.
So he's likely taking his prep year at Potter House, which is in Florida, I believe. And he's a tall, lengthy shot blocker. He's not much of an offensive threat. He's a guy that can score inside, but he's not the kind of guy that's going to stretch the floor. But I mean, at the end of the day, he's a really good defender and a really good shot blocker. But I think it's kind of, as you said, it's kind of up in the air about whether or not he ends up stepping foot on Temple's campus.
Mm-hmm. Next question comes from the screen name Owl Worldwide. Knowing what you know now, what do you think our 2021 class ends up being? My guess, Miller, Zach Hicks, and then I think they hold if Brandon Sanders is not in the mix, hold for a transfer if they don't get Sam Onuayamide. I know he'll be tough to get. I know he just got a Kansas offer, but based off of some of the people I've talked to, I think they're still in the mix for him. I think Temple, Providence, and Memphis are right there in the mix. But I do think there's a legitimate possibility that they would only take 2 incoming freshmen and save that third scholarship for a grad transfer, an immediately eligible transfer, just knowing how transfers work now. And if there's a big that they can get from a mid-major program that's looking to transfer up, I think that could be a possibility for them. I don't know what your thoughts are on this one, Sam.
Yeah, I'd say so. You have Hysier Miller locked up. Seems like Zach Hicks is in the cards. It sounds like, it seems like he's inevitable, hopefully, to come to Temple. Sam Onuayamide is kind of the goal for your big man, but again, he's only blowing up as the days go by. If there's a winter season, he could really blow up even more. He could improve his game and find higher offers. Maybe that Kansas offer is a legitimate offer, but I think that if they can't land Sam Onuayamide, there's a name out there that we don't know that is going to be their third guy.
And with Hicks, I think right now, if you're looking at his recruitment right now, I think probably it's Temple, it's Missouri, and Richmond are probably the 3 programs that have the best shot. Again, all of this is going to be really interesting. He's visited Temple. I think he's done a virtual visit with Missouri. I don't know off the top of my head if he's been down to Richmond, but you're going to hear pretty soon that the fall is going to be a dead period, and kids are not going to be able to visit campuses. And so does Zach Hicks decide to commit in the fall? Does he roll the dice and say, I'm going to see what's available in the spring? So we'll have to see how his recruitment plays out. And again, he's the sharp shooting forward, I guess we could say, versatile forward from Camden Catholic High School, just over the river in South Jersey. So
he's a really good piece.
Yes. So we'll see how that plays out. Next question comes from the screen name Magster from the message board. What are the chances of landing Derek Lively for the 2022 class? He's a top 50 player. So until Temple lands a top 50 player, the best I can say is that it'll be a challenge. Also remember, if they do take 3 players from the 21 class and everyone stays and there's no roster movement, that 2022 class becomes a 1-player class. So I think that'll be a big piece of it. Obviously, Temple's going to recruit him. He's a very good player. He's the center from West Town. Maybe Jake Forrester convinces him to come to Temple. That would be a monster get for Temple, but they're going to have to fight off some really good programs to get him. If it ends up being a 1-player class, we'll see. Again, in 2021, maybe Temple, they have Hysier Miller locked up. Maybe they get Zach Hicks. Maybe they decide to roll over that third scholarship to 2022 and they have 2 to give. But as of now, they would just be projected to have 1. So I'd say the chances of getting Lively aren't great right now. And again, that's not really a shot at the staff. It's just going to be tough. Again, until they kind of break into that territory of winning a little bit more consistently, maybe making some noise in the tournament. Maybe they get into that territory of locking up a top 75 guy, top 50 guy. So we'll see. Next question from Esther Boyer is the screen name. For each member of the Scoop team, you are the athletic director, and at the end of the 18-19 season, who do you hire as head coach to replace Fran Dunphy? Was Pat Kraft limited by the university on his preferred choices? Sam, you want me to take this one since Kyle and I were a little closer to covering this?
I don't think there's anyone I would take over Aaron McKee. I think that fans are going to be quick to judge Aaron McKee on a not amazing first year as head coach, but I think Aaron McKee is probably the perfect fit to take this program moving forward.
Yeah, and when it came time, again, and I think a lot of people listening to this podcast know this, when you have a major decision like that, whether it's the football coach or the basketball coach, it's not just the athletic director that's involved. The trustees get involved, the presidents get involved. It's a big scale decision. Was Pat Kraft limited by the university on his preferred choices? I don't know if he was limited. I just got the sense that, again, that's a big decision. The president and the trustees do get involved. in a similar situation, or a different situation, I should say, might Pat have conducted a national search? Maybe. But I think along the way, and we've talked about this before on previous podcasts, when Aaron McKee joined Fran Dunphy's staff, people have to remember that he didn't come in saying, yeah, I'm coming back to my alma mater. I'm gunning for Fran Dunphy's job. I want his job. I eventually want to be the head coach. I think it was kind of this gradual growth where he kind of felt things out and said, okay, I think I can do this. I'm getting the hang of recruiting, because Aaron's been pretty honest about that in the past. When he was an NBA assistant coach, he would say, you'd be in and out of the facility and, on the golf course a couple hours later. Not always like that in college ball. You're texting recruits, you're following up with recruits, and maybe helping one of your student athletes with something off the court. So I think for Pat, in some of my conversations with him, I kind of think it was a situation where he's like, okay, Aaron really does want this. He really does want this. And I know, obviously, Pat's just getting started now up at Boston College as their athletic director, but I know he was really thrilled with Aaron, thrilled to have him back. So I think it was an interesting situation at the time. It was like, what direction is Temple going to go in? Are they going to conduct a national search? But I think that once Pat knew that Aaron really was into this and wanted the job, I don't think I think everybody was kind of in agreement where it was like, yeah, let's bring one of our own back. It could be a great story if it works out. They didn't do a national search. There's just so much that goes into it. You have people in the Philadelphia basketball community saying, you have one of your best gifts in your own backyard. Don't do a national search. If Aaron was kind of so-so at the time and said, I'm not really sure if I want the job, then I think, yeah, Pat might have pushed for a national search. But I think once everybody kind of knew that Aaron did want the job, and of course Aaron was trying to be deferential and not step all over Fran Dunphy, I think once everything kind of sorted itself out, Aaron was the guy, and there was no national search. So long way of answering that question. Hope that made sense. Next question, a couple of questions from SoCal Al from the message board. Any dates or qualifiers on the start of the basketball season? Nope. It is, it's August 6th. Who the hell knows? I mean, it's just quite simply too early. If Sam and I were to start throwing out definitive statements about whether or not the basketball season is going to start on time, we just don't know. I remember back in early June, I was a little bit more optimistic and thinking that there was, the college football season was going to start on time. It depends on, again, people being smart in this country, cases declining, everyone being healthy, good leadership, the potential of a vaccine, we'll see. But
practice expected to start this month, but
yes, hopefully again, like just the workouts, whether practice, whether the first day of college basketball practice in earnest starts in September and goes into October, we'll see. But yeah, they're hoping to start working out on campus pretty soon, and hopefully things progress there. But no, any dates or qualifiers in the start of the basketball season, just way too soon to tell. SoCal Al's second question: any rumors on the athletic director search? Nothing substantial, nothing that's really worth getting into. I mean, I do think that the interesting thing for Temple is, Fran Dunphy is your interim acting athletic director right now. We've talked about this before. Fran has said, I'm not a very good no-sayer. I think Fran is doing this because he wants to be loyal to Temple and wants to help. The interesting thing to follow will be, Dick Engler has decided he's going to step down and is going to stay for the rest of the year. I get a couple of conflicting, viewpoints on this. Some people say, well, Fran Dunphy could be around for a year because what athletic director is going to come to Temple and allow themselves to be hired by the current president, and then they're going to be transitioning over to working for a new president. Some people have told me that they don't think that will be a factor. So we'll have to see. I don't believe they've started any national search yet for their new athletic director. So it will be interesting to see how it plays out and how long Fran, stays around. But, I don't think that anything has progressed beyond, hey, Fran is leaning on the people around him, trying to get through, bringing everybody back to campus, helping all of Temple student athletes just get settled in, helping them with whatever they need help with. I mean, he's certainly got a lot on his hands right now, but nothing credible, beyond that, other than I think they're just taking things a day at a time. But it will, again, be interesting to see what happens if they do decide to make a move on their new athletic director and the current president and Dick Englert hires him or her, or if they decide to wait for the new president to come in. So we'll have to see. Next question comes from TU Owls 37. What is the status of the basketball schedule for the upcoming year? And what have you been hearing regarding fans in the stands? Again, I get the question, but it's too early. I think they're figuring out whether they're going to have fans in the stands for football, much less basketball. So nothing I could tell you there. I know that's not the incredibly exciting answer, but it's just too soon to say. But
that's the good news, is football's fighting the clock because they're supposed to start playing games in a couple of weeks. Basketball at least has time to work with.
Yeah. I mean, we'll have to see. We'll just have to see, if the numbers get better, if this country's healthier, maybe the season will start on time, or maybe they do. I could see a few different scenarios playing out. I could see a situation where maybe the top 6 or 7 leagues in the country play, and some of the low major programs decide to not play this season. That could cause an interesting situation where you have some guys who would consider grad transferring, and they sit out and they work on their game and they're ready to grad transfer to a program like Temple or Memphis or Villanova or St. Joe's or wherever. Or maybe the season starts in January and maybe they just do scrap the non-conference games and they say it's not healthy enough to play just yet. So just too much we don't know right now, but obviously understand why it's on fans' minds. Next question from Rockland Al from the message board. John, what is the likelihood of Temple moving its road game at UMass to September 5th and trying to work out a deal to play at Pitt or West Virginia or even BYU should the Idaho or Miami games be canceled? So the Miami game, as we said, has been canceled for this season. As we said before, the Idaho game could be up in the air based on what their players are saying. There is an open date currently on UMass's schedule for September 5th. They were scheduled to play UConn on Thursday night, September 3rd, but that's wiped out now because UConn isn't playing this season. So it's a possibility. Pitt might be an intriguing possibility if, as I understand it, based off of what the ACC has said, Temple would have to go there to play them. I think the ACC stipulation is if you're going to schedule additional non-conference games, it's got to be at your site. Everything has to be cool with the testing protocols and everything. So we'll see. Again, it's an interesting puzzle for Fran Dunphy and his staff to figure out now. Again, if you had told me at this time last year that we'd be in the midst of a pandemic and Fran Dunphy would be the athletic director and he and his staff are trying to figure out scheduling options for college football, I would say that is then 2020 is really going to be outdoing itself. But here we are. So who knows? But again, I mean, from their statement today, again, this could all be null and void a week from now. If the Big Ten and the Pac-12 just say, what are we doing here? And it starts a chain reaction where they say, we're just going to try to play in the spring. All this is for naught. But if they keep moving forward, then yeah, I think Temple's doing its best to try to schedule some new games. We'll see what happens there. This is a fun question. I thought we would get this one at some point. Another question from Al Worldwide on the message board. Predictions for who you guys think will fill up the remaining single-digit numbers. This is for football, obviously. Sam, do you have any thoughts on this? I know basketball is more your specialty, but you follow the football program too. Brandon Mack, where's number 1? Dan Archibong, where's number 6? Randall Jones, where's number 7? Isaiah Graham Mobley, where's number 8? Those are all taken. So numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, and 9, and potentially 0 are open because student athletes could wear number 0 this year. Just a quick reminder that the current single-digit players in the Leadership Council, the Player Leadership Council at Temple, have some input after the team vote. But the team vote really drives things from, Rod Carey said that before, so keep that in mind. But Sam, off the top of your head, you have
I texted Carolina Sam and we kind of threw some names back and forth because I figured he would have some good ideas. So we threw a couple back and forth. I said we got a mailbag question about the remaining 6 single digit numbers, and I threw out Ifeanyi Majang, Jaden Blue. He said maybe Linwood Crump, maybe Pokosi Quenku.
William Quenku.
He said Fair was technically a single digit, but he had a number on his helmet or something.
Yeah. So the offensive linemen, by NCAA rules, they can't wear a single digit on the field. But Hennessy was technically a single digit guy. That's where I could see Pocosi, maybe getting a single digit there and being both.
Pocosi, Kwenku, Linwood Crump, Ifan Magic, Jaden Blue are a couple of the names we threw around. I see Christian Braswell you have written down.
Yeah, I think Majay, Jaden Blue, and Christian Braswell are virtual locks in my humble opinion. I'd be surprised if they don't get single digits. They've kind of proven themselves on the field, off the field. Even if I were to venture a guess at the actual numbers, I could see Majay wearing number 9, following in that lineage of going back to Muhammad Wilkerson, Jacob Martin, Michael Dogby. He's good. He's really, really good. He's the real deal. I think he's their best pro prospect right now. And again, all indications are that he's really respected off the field as well. Jaden Blue, as everybody knows, was the program's first 1,000-yard receiver, and just had a heck of a season last season. I could see him maybe wearing number 2, taking Isaiah Wright's number 2. Maybe Christian Braswell taking number 3. Again, all those guys have potential to be future pros. Braswell was really good last year. He was just as good as Harrison Hand was last season. He played better than Harrison Hand down the stretch. I think a lot of people are going to wonder about Anthony Russo. I think Russo maybe has a chance of getting that number 8, but I don't think it's a given. I like Anthony a lot, but I still think he has something to prove. And if there's a season, I would not rule out Real Mitchell, the transfer from Iowa State, if he's eligible, pushing him, and Trav Betty pushing him. Obviously, Todd Centeio is off at Colorado State now. Ramon Davis, people will wonder about him. He just posted on social media that he wants to switch his number to 13. Had a good freshman season. I don't know that I see him getting a single digit this season. But I think Majay Blue and Braswell, I'd be surprised if they don't get it. And I think some of the more likely candidates are, as you mentioned, William Kwenku at linebacker, Amir Tyler at safety. He's been a cool story. From Lakewood High School, came in with Chappelle Russell. He's talked pretty openly about how much he's matured since he first got to Temple. He's hung around Sean Bradley and Chappelle. And he's been real honest about just kind of trying to emulate their behavior off the field. And I remember Chappelle and Sean telling me the same thing too. So I could see him getting a single digit too. I mean, he really, his production really got better on the field when Benny Walls got hurt last year. So those would be my guesses. We'll see how that plays out. Next question comes from West Coast Al. I'll go off topic here. Landed back in Philly yesterday for an extended trip home. First stop wasn't always as D'Alessandro's. Pretend you live in a different location or were away from home for a while. What's your first food stop when you return? Doesn't have to be cheesesteaks. What do you got here, Sam?
First food stop. The first time I read that, I didn't see that don't have to be cheesesteaks. First food stop in general is a good one. Well, cheesesteak wise, I'll go Sonny's. They have really good gluten-free bread, and that's probably my favorite cheesesteak. Yeah. Wow. First food stop in general, though.
How much have you ventured off campus to sample the? Yeah,
a little bit.
Philly.
Once quarantine's over and I can really go out and sit somewhere, I'll probably go. I haven't been back to South Street Barbacoa yet. I've only been there once, and it was the most amazing tacos I've ever had. So I'm really looking forward to going back there. But one of the first things I actually got when I came back, me and one of my roommates are really into poke bowls. So going to Chinatown to get poke bowls or.
Yes. I forgot about South Philly Barbacoa. My wife and I love South Philly Barbacoa. It's tremendous. It's inexpensive. It's really, really good. First stop when you return, I'd probably head down to South Philly. I would
have John Brennan take us around and find some.
Yeah, have John take us around. And I've talked before in the podcast. I love the Victor Cafe. That's for those of you who are Rocky fans, and if you saw Creed, if you saw, I guess was Rocky 6, the restaurant that Rocky owns in the movie, it's called Adrian's, but they filmed it at Victor Cafe at 13th and Dickinson. Their food's great. The staff, what's that?
It's a good trivia question.
Yeah, the wait staff sings opera. Their food's incredible. South Philly Barbacoa would be a great one. I love going down to Chinatown. I don't know that I would jump to eating a cheesesteak right away. I think I would probably go back closer to one of the places around our old house and into the neighborhood there. There's a lot of good stuff to choose from.
There's also one of the first places I did go back on Temple's campus is the Mexican food truck right by the student center that's new as of like beginning of spring semester maybe, that has like the best, it's like actual good quality Mexican food.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty inexpensive. So I generally opt for that over Chipotle just because it's cheaper and it's better Mexican food.
If we're going Mexican, I have not been to that truck yet. If we're going Mexican food, the Cantina on Passyunk Avenue is really good.
Yeah, I don't have a car, so that doesn't help me.
When we're allowed to again, Sam, we'll venture off campus. We'll go to there's a place near our old house called Los Gallos at 10th and Wolf, has tremendous Mexican food. We'll go down there. All right, so next question. Oh, we have a question from our friend Ray Dunn at Ray Dunn BTB on Twitter. Ray is the sports director and your colleague at WHIP, Temple Student Run Radio Station. Ray does a terrific job, like you, one of the best and brightest students I've ever worked with. So Ray asks, if you could quarantine with one Temple basketball player throughout the history of the program, who would it be?
I have two answers, but I know one of them kind of overlaps with maybe what one of your answers might be. I was going to go with either Mike Vrieswick, because he has enough stories to last you a lifetime. Mm-hmm. So constant entertainment without the need for a TV. And the other would be Quincy Wadley, because he's just such a smart guy and knows the game of basketball so well. So I think he'd be a great guy to watch the restart of basketball with and just kind of talk hoops with.
Yeah, I'm with you on Quincy. I would kind of overlap with you there. I mean, I would love to pick the brain of a guy like Guy Rogers or Hal Lear. I'm too young to have seen them play, just to hear what basketball was like during that era. But Quincy was great. I mean, like John talked about a culture changer. I mean, obviously John Chaney was recruiting at a high level at that point, but Quincy was just a different guy, where he was a two-sport athlete out of Harrisburg High School. He was a quarterback, really came along as a shooter, but was such a terrific defender. We've talked about this. Like when you would sit close to the court and you could hear some of the trash talk, and he would do his research on the players he had to guard before he didn't have the resources that we have on the internet now. And he would really get into guys' heads. He would be great. I think I would probably go with Mark Jackson. He was so awesome to cover. Again, fans know him as the guy who came in, transferred, went to Roman Catholic. If you're looking at impact guys from the Philly Catholic League, Temple didn't actually directly recruit him out of high school. He went to VCU. Things didn't work out for him after a season. He had a terrific 2 years at Temple, left a year early. He just has such a fascinating life story. I mean, he grew up with virtually nothing, just off of Temple's campus, and he left a year early so he could go make money. He got drafted in the second round, went overseas to help just to help pay for his basic living expenses for his mother. He's an awesome guy. He runs his own program now where he trains his son, or I think he has two kids, or at least two sons, and was around when Aaron was introduced as the head coach, and obviously really knows the game. He's a pleasure to watch on TV, and he was just always super cool to talk to when I covered him. So I would throw Mark Jackson into the mix there too.
And I did ask Ray who he would go with, and he said he'd probably go with Bill Milkvey, just because he's such a good guy. He's got a really cool story, and Milkvey, the one who holds the NCAA record for most points in a single game, was 73 in 1954.
Look at you dropping your Temple basketball.
Fun fact about that is Wilt Chamberlain told Bill Milkvey that he set the precedent for high-scoring games. And because Wilt Chamberlain scored 100 a little bit after Bill Milkvey scored his 73 in one game, and he said, you were the one that really set the precedent and set the standard.
And where did Wilt score his 100 points? Where were they playing that game? Do you know?
Against Wilkes-Barre College, right?
No, I'm talking about when Wilt.
Oh, Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Yes, okay. So you know your stuff. Hershey. Yes. Probably similar level crowd.
No came through there. There weren't a lot of people at that game. Honestly, if enough people got together and said, let's say this never happened, you probably could have slid it under the rug.
Yeah, absolutely.
There were not people at that game.
Yes. Next question from the archives, a former OwlScoop intern, Bud Knapp, checking in on Twitter, who is an under-the-radar player on the defensive side of the ball this year for Temple. That's a good question, Bud. I don't know. It's maybe going to be – I would think, again, if there's a season, maybe it's one of the guys that obviously Quincy Roche transferring to Miami leaves a huge void for them. So, maybe it's a guy like one of the guys that has a chance to make an impact at defensive end. Maybe I'd keep an eye on someone like Leighton Jordan or Arnold Ibiketti. Someone like that. I wouldn't say Braswell's under the radar. I certainly wouldn't say that Maje's under the radar. I wouldn't say that Amir Tyler's under the radar. So I would say maybe Jordan or Ibiketti. Any other names you would throw in there, Sam, that I couldn't think of?
No, I don't have any off the top of my head. I was going to say, do you think out of any of the like 60 or 70 people Sam Neumann has written about have a chance to come in and have an immediate impact? Or
Yeah, see, that's a good question. An immediate impact recruit. It's so weird because they had a week and a half of spring ball.
That much.
They had some early enrollees. I'm going to be a little biased and say if we're talking about the incoming freshmen, obviously they've got some impact transfers coming in. If Real Mitchell is eligible coming out of Iowa State, I absolutely think he pushes Anthony Russo. CJ Perez could end up starting at center. He knows Rod Carey's offense and Mike Yurimovich's offense. If we're talking about some of the incoming freshmen, I'm biased because of where I live. I'd keep an eye on Trey Blair out of Howard High School. He's good. He's coming in projected to play safety, but I think he could be a factor in the return game. He's a heck of a player, really smart kid. Again, graduated early. I feel for any of these early enrollee guys who left to come to college early. Things get shut down on campus by mid-March, but he would be somebody I would keep an eye on there. That's a good question. Next question from @TempleFanAl on Twitter. What non-conference teams should Temple schedule games with to replace both Rutgers and Miami? Whoever's available. As of today, FCS football might not be played this year, so you might not have the option of saying, okay, let's go grab an FCS opponent. So, people have said they should go back to. It would be a cool local thing if they could play Villanova. That may not be an option. I don't know. Again, maybe they could work something out with Pitt. It's really, truly hard to say. We've never seen anything like this. I don't know.
I think it's tough to give a straight answer right now. But while we're on this question, before we have a couple more basketball mailbag questions, I feel like I have to ask completely subjectively and with all the bias in the world right now, John. If you were to make a prediction, or if you were to say what they should do, if it was up to you, what do you think happens for this football season?
I think that
not thinking that anyone's going to take what you're going to say and run with it, but just what do you think?
I think in a perfect world, should they punt to the spring, and hopefully we're sitting around in December and early January saying that people have been smart, that this country has finally gotten serious about really trying to be healthy and smart and safe during the pandemic. And again, it's hard. It's going to be conflicting with flu season and everything, but hopefully there's a vaccine that's dependable at that point. And hopefully the cases have gone drastically down, and then it's safer to play then. That's going to come with its challenges too. I think we could be a week or two away from, again, like the Big Ten or the Pac-12 saying, college presidents looking around saying, I've got too much other stuff to worry about. We just can't do it. We can't do it. And maybe one of the tipping points will be, one of the things we had talked about before, even if we've just been talking on our group text or whatever, some people, if you punt to the spring, some of the top players aren't going to play because the NFL is not going to move the draft date. Well, some of the top players are already opting out already. It's Micah Parsons. It's Greg Rousseau. I mean, who's it going to be next? And I wonder if they're going to be looking around saying it might not make a difference. So, even if we play in the fall, we might not have some of the top players around. So I don't know. I mean, in a perfect world, if things are happier and healthier and more easily organized in the spring, probably the better thing to do. But if all of the conferences and all the schools feel like they have smart testing protocol in place and they can pull this off, who am I to say that they shouldn't play? Obviously, a lot of places will probably be without fans. Penn State already announced that they're not going to be playing before fans. Temple will do what the Eagles tell them they can do. But in a perfect world, I guess you play in the spring and hopefully things are a lot better then. So I don't know. What do you think?
Again, I'm going to preface this by saying this is me. No one's going to listen or take my advice. I think it's a terrible idea to play. I think it's irresponsible and just not. I think it's an awful idea. I think they're going to try to go through it because there's obviously a lot more that goes into it. But you look at how successful the NBA and the NHL and the WNBA have been, and Major League Soccer have been in bubbles, and then you look at something like the MLB that is not in a bubble, and although they're geographically, I guess, neutralized, they're, the AL East and the NL East, the AL Central and the NL Central, et cetera, they're only playing kind of in their general geographic area. There are schools that are traveling, and that's not going well, and they're having a lot of cases. I think there's no way that colleges with that many people and that big a team can travel that much, even if they just play conference games. I don't think they can travel that much and not expect to have at least minor outbreaks. And I think when you're dealing with college kids, I think when you're dealing with student athletes, just ethically, I don't see how they can go through with that.
Yeah,
but that's my sense.
By the time, if we record next week, we could have a whole lot of other news on our hands. I mean, it really is the very definition of taking things day by day. Again, I think if it happens, it will be because I think one of those two leagues, as I understand it now, like the Big Ten or the Pac-12, I think they might be one of the conferences that kind of, sets
one thing that Colin Thompson talked about last time we recorded was the idea of having geographically organized games. Like he said something about like, why don't they just go play Villanova, and why don't they go play Delaware, and why doesn't Temple go play teams in the area? I think that makes a lot more sense than traveling to Texas and traveling to Florida.
Yeah.
Now it's reported that the Big Ten and the ACC for college basketball, at least, there's mullings of talk about what if they did a bubble.
Mm-hmm. This is for basketball, Sam, you're saying?
Yeah, not today. That there's been some talk about what if college basketball had some kind of bubble.
We'll see. That'll be interesting.
And for college sports, it's because everyone would probably be online, but with college sports, that's a whole different ballgame. That would be interesting to see.
Yeah. Next question from the screen name What TU. What are our chances with Poplar, meaning Nicene Poplar, who goes by Wooga, from Math, Civics, and Sciences? He looks like the real deal. He is the real deal. He's a very good player. He just did announce his top 10 list. Temple is on it. Our Tom Agnudo talked to him in a story that you can read on our site if you're a subscriber. So his top 10 list includes Temple, Miami, Auburn, Virginia Commonwealth, or VCU, St. John's, LSU, Maryland, Penn State, Georgia, and Seton Hall. He's a top, Rivals has him 105th ranked overall in the class. He's really good. He's a very, very good player. Doesn't live far from Temple's campus, as I understand it. If Temple convinced him to stay home, he would be a massive get for them. A massive, massive get. I think he shoots the ball like Deontay Christmas. Might get to the rim better than Deontay did at that stage of his high school career. Again, you can check out our story on the site. If he does, what are the chances with him? Again, I'd put it at less than 50%. Again, I think it's one of those things until you see it happen. They start getting kids consistently at that level. I'd have to see it to believe it. Do I think the Temple might have a better chance than people think? Yeah, sure. But we'll see. It'll be tough. It'll be tough to get him, but we'll see. Again, check out Tom Agnudo's story if you haven't had the chance. We'll see how things play out there. Next question, Herd Owl 51 from that screen name. 2-part question. If Hysier does indeed commit to the Owls, do you view this as a big step moving forward in regards to potential future success recruiting in the city? Also, can you name the last Temple basketball commitment, Temple basketball received from a Neumann Goretti player? Personally, I can't think of any. So we know that Hysier is committed already. Again, we're recording this a little bit earlier. Yes, I think we can agree that it is a big step moving forward. We've already talked about that. Again, looking back on this, I think if you're Aaron McKee, Chris Clark, Jimmy Fennerty, and that staff, you're hoping that 3 or 4 years from now, you're looking back and saying that this was really a tipping point for them and saying we got we got a kid to stay home. And who knows, maybe if we were not in the midst of a pandemic, maybe he's got some Big East offers and some other offers, and he's really mulling, should I stay home? Should I go? But yeah, I think it's a big step forward. Sam, I think I kind of know your answer on this, but what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think it's pretty big. I think to get someone from the PCL, as you had mentioned before, they haven't gotten someone from the PCL since Chris Clark and from 04 to 08. So to have someone from the city who stays in the city and could be that guy, especially when Aaron McKee's your head coach and that's the culture he wants to build. They get a lot of local guys kind of in the program with Chris Clark on the staff, Mark Makin's on the staff, not a local guy, but a Philly guy from Temple. So to have to kind of keep things in the city, within the city for Temple, I think is really big for what Aaron McKee wants to do with this program and make them really like Philadelphia's team.
Yeah, and the second part of the question here was, can you name the last commitment Temple basketball received from Neumann Goretti player? Personally, I can't think of any. I was talking to John throughout the week, and yeah, I think he is. I don't know. Maybe you could go back to, pre whatever, 1970. Maybe there was a player that they got back then. It just would have been Bishop Neumann High School. But I think if you're going on the actual Neumann Goretti name, though, I think this is the first player they've gotten out of Neumann Goretti. Again, it's a school that traditionally has been sending players all over the place. I mean, Fran Dunphy almost got Tariq Duran. He ended up going to LaSalle, was a prominent part of that Sweet 16 team. At the time, that was a bit of a swing and a miss for Temple. They did recruit him. I think Giannini was like, hey, the ball's in your hand from day one. And I'm not sure that he wanted to play behind Juan Fernandez at the time. So, but again, they never had a serious shot at a couple of these other guys like Scoop Jackson, Rick Jardine. So, or did I mess that up? Scoop Jardine, Rick Jackson, sorry. So yeah, I think this is the first Neumann Goretti guy they've gotten. As you said, Chris Clark was their last recruit out of the Philadelphia Catholic League. So kind of a cool story for Chris, and that he gets to have a hand in recruiting and bringing to Temple an impact player from the Philadelphia Catholic League. So I do think this is, as we've mentioned earlier in the podcast, it's a big deal for them. Next question, Owl Dumph is the screen name from the message boards. To your knowledge, is Hysier close with anyone on the Philly hoop scene that he may try and persuade to join him at Temple? I'm sure he is. I don't know, Sam, if he talked to you about that, if that was part of your conversations. He knows a lot of these guys. Is he actively trying to get any of them to come to Temple, maybe without having talked to them? I'm not sure. I don't know if you guys have talked about that at all in your conversations.
Not extensively, and I wouldn't say confidently that like there's anybody he's close with, but I think it's worth noting that as all the scrimmages we talked about and those workouts and those runs that he's been doing this summer, there have been a lot of local Philly guys there. Zach Hicks being one of them, Sam Iamide being another, Justice Williams, who just transferred to Monteverde Academy but has an offer from Temple. Quadir Copeland has been playing at those runs. Jalen Duran was there. So there's a lot of top Philly talent there. Nassim Poplar was at those runs. So whether or not he's really talking to those guys about, hey, let's think about going to Temple together, who knows? But I think it's definitely worth noting that he's been playing pickup. And if he's impressing those guys, if he's really putting on a show at those games, there could be some chatter there about potentially teaming up at Temple.
Yeah, and again, I think I think the thing here, again, we've been saying this throughout the podcast, is if he comes in and makes an impact right away, and then by his sophomore year, maybe he's starting and he's playing really, really well, and he's as good as we think he can be, he's the guy that can make it cool to stay home and say, yeah, I'm a PCL player. I could have drawn out my recruitment. Maybe I could have gone to Seton Hall. Maybe I could have gone to Virginia Tech. Maybe I could have played in the Big East. Maybe I could have punted until the spring and held out for some other offers. I chose to stay home. Mm-hmm. There's everything you need here at Temple. And then he becomes the guy that you see on the billboards on 76 and SEPTA buses and stuff like that. I think that's where his real impact will be down the line.
And one thing that he said to me is a quote I included in the story when I asked him, like, hey, what's it like being that kid that could really bring Temple to the next level, that is the kid staying in the city, that is the one staying in his home city? And the quote he gave me was, it's a great opportunity. There's nothing like playing in your home city. And I think that really encompasses, like, there really is nothing like it. It's a cool experience for him. He's going to be near a lot of friends and family. They're going to be able to come see him play. And John Brennan had mentioned like he's going to get to play in the Big Five, and he play for those Big Five games. All his friends and family are going to be able to come out, so it's a cool experience for him, and I think it'll be really good for the program, especially if he has some success at Temple.
Yeah, and again, if he's the guy that can make it cool, that's a big deal, because the mentality that you're describing, Sam, used to be kind of the prevailing mentality. And then for a while, even Jay Wright, it was hard for, Jay Wright emptied the tank on trying to get Gerald Henderson and Wayne Ellington out of like Episcopal Academy and schools like that, and couldn't get them to stay home. Now, obviously, Jay's gotten a ton of other good players, but it's gotten harder and harder and harder to keep kids home. But again, if Miller changes that a little bit, it could be a really big deal. Mm-hmm. Next question from our good friend from Varun Kumar, who's done some writing for us at OwlScoop at VRKumar8. Let's go with something easy. What's your favorite hoagie spot in the region?
This is a food podcast.
What's that?
This is a food podcast, and I love it. Well, favorite, yeah. I'll go with the same answer I said before. Sonny's is my favorite place to get a cheesesteak.
Mm-hmm. What about a hoagie? Are you a hoagie guy or no? What do they call them up in Massachusetts? They call them subs?
Yeah, they're subs.
Okay.
I guess I really haven't ventured to look for good, like where I can get a good gluten-free hoagie, because the bread is an issue.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I don't have a great answer for that. Why? What would you go with?
Yeah, I don't know. In the city or in the region. So Varun's saying in the region. We live in Havertown now. I would say there are a couple of places near us that are good. Centrellas on Brookline Boulevard. We tried a place called Sopranos in Broomall, Newtown, on Westchester Pike in Broomall. That was the night of the NFL draft. Some of my friends and I watched the draft virtually together, and we ordered from Sopranos. I thought it was really, really good. There's a place called Bacella's on Eagle Road in Havertown that's really good. When I lived in Roxborough, Lenny's was good on Ridge Avenue. In South Philly, Johnny's was good. But it wasn't traditionally a place where I got hoagies. It was more soup and chicken pastina soup and pasta and stuff like that. But their sandwiches were really good. So those are a few of the places I would think of.
To get a hero.
What?
To get a hero.
A hero? You're talking about the Greek food?
No, a hero is what they call them in New York. Isn't a sandwich or a sub in New York a hero?
Yes, they are. Yeah. I thought you were talking about the Greek.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but yeah, you've got some good options around here. Final question from another former OwlScoop staff member, Greg Paone. You haven't met Greg yet. So Greg, congratulations to Greg. We should have mentioned this before. Greg just got engaged. So at Paone 121, John, talk to me about the songs you would put on my wedding playlist. So I responded to him, and I don't think he got back to me. I said, talk to me. I said, what's the crowd like? Is this a larger wedding, a smaller wedding? You talking dinner music?
When you play the song is an essential question to answer.
Yes.
To follow up with this one.
I would love to put some songs on his wedding playlist where people where people look around and say, what are they playing? Like, I would love
probably like 3 or 4 years ago, I went to my cousin's wedding. Mm-hmm. He graduated from Michigan, and he still goes to Michigan bars, living in Brooklyn in New York City. And at his wedding, him and his college buddies, they played the Michigan fight song, and they all went nuts.
Oh, I guess I won't get myself in too much trouble here because this is a Temple podcast, but I can tell you, in the future, Sam, if you go to weddings, if you end up graduating from, you will graduate from Temple, but if you stay in this area and you will eventually go to a wedding where there's a Penn State graduate, and they will play the Penn State fight song, and everybody will gather in the middle of the dance floor, and God love them for the fellowship and the bond with their school, but it's just inevitable. It will happen. And anybody who didn't go to Penn State will look around and be like, all right, let's get this over.
I'll be in the back and I'll throw a drink into the middle, and
that will end up happening. I would love to throw a curveball into the mix, but I think Greg would appreciate that because he's funny and quirky. I would throw some Sinatra in there. I'd try to throw him off and maybe play like Conga from like Miami Sound Machine and see if people would get out there and dance to that. I don't know. I mean, like assembling.
Forever by Chris Brown.
What's that?
Forever by Chris Brown.
Yes. I can tell you that when we were putting together our wedding playlist, I remember like going over the playlist with my wife and the DJ that we had, and Don't Stop Believing by Journey was on there. And I remember thinking like, this song's a giant cliche. Yeah, a lot of people like it, but I was like, do we keep this on the playlist? And I don't think we ever like had a resolution to it, and just stayed on the playlist. And I can tell you that it was the last song played of the night, and everybody danced to it. And I'm going to sound biased, but my wife did a fantastic job in planning our wedding. We got married down in Brigantine, and everybody danced. Everybody had a good time, and everybody was dancing to Don't Stop Believing. We still have just video from our phones. I remember my wife saying, remember you said that you didn't want this on the playlist? Look around. Are you against fun? Everybody's having fun. So it's a huge cliche. It's definitely not anything that's unique.
One of those songs that you hear the title and you're like, but then you hear the song in the right context and you go crazy for it.
Yeah, people loved it. So it was a hit at our wedding. So I'll put that on Greg's list. So hopefully you'll meet Greg at some point. Greg worked for us, did some great stuff for CSN Philly, and is getting married. So congratulations to Greg. So Greg, this will be an ongoing conversation, Greg. We'll have some more thoughts there. And I'm sure Kyle will have some thoughts as well too. So thank you for the question. So that'll do it for this week. Again, thank you all for the just the whole slew of mailbag questions we had. Of course, a big thank you to John Brennan for being our guest this week while he's on vacation and talking to us about Hysier Miller, Temple's latest verbal commitment. Thank you to Sam again for joining us, and thank you to Sam Neumann for educating today's youth and SAT training that he's doing. So we'll keep you guys posted. We'll see what next week brings in the world of college football and the world of recruiting and all that stuff. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.